Fix It Tony here. Thanks for clicking on my video, guys. So today I had a lot of requests about my LS460. This car is becoming more and more popular as time goes on as a good luxury used vehicle. Unlike the Mercedes and the BMWs, these cars hold up. They aren't cheap to fix, but the quality is right up there. What I mean by that is you can get a good quality car for not a lot of money that doesn't need a lot of repairs for the most part, as long as you get one, a good one. Two, you take good care of it and you don't let stuff go by. And that's always seems to be the problem with these, is somebody will find one for a good deal. And the reason being that it's a good deal is somebody did not take care of it. And what do I mean by not taking care of it? So let me go over. So I've owned this car since it had 60,000 miles. It currently has 210,000 miles. So let's go over some of the problems we had. So first problem we had, but maintenance. I put 3 sets of tires. This is the 3rd set of tires I put in this car. I highly recommend putting quality tires. A lot of people put Chinese garbage tires. Pay the extra money, put Michelin's on it. Not only does it ride better, but these tires last longer. So let's go on to the next thing, brakes. I had to put a set of brakes, 2 sets of brakes on this thing so far. Make sure you buy good quality pads. Even AutoZone, their elite pads are good for these. The rotors are good, the warranty's good. And what I recommend you do is, the warranty's 3 years, I believe, on the gold rotors, or 2 years. Right when it gets into warranty, swap the rotors back out again. It's a free swap out. These are heavy cars. They weigh about 4,300 pounds. And, you know, they will go through brakes, especially if you do any sort of like aggressive driving in these. So that's one thing you're gonna have to deal with. Some of the other things that went wrong, the trunk latch. So that went bad, probably about 100,000 miles. That part, again, dealer only, about $250. Pretty easy swap, not a big deal. This particular unit has the Mark Levinson stereo system. Stereo sounds beautiful, wonderful, but we did have an amp failure. The good thing is, if you go on eBay, there's a bunch of guys who do rebuilds on these. The rebuild on the amp, only 300 bucks, and he warranties it for life. So if it ever breaks again, they'll take care of it. So, you know, not a lot of crazy stuff here. So we'll go over the hood, under the hood, and talk about some other stuff that we dealt with here. So, as some people know who own Toyotas, they don't have the greatest water pumps. The water pumps always fail on these, not just on the Lexus, but basically any Toyota. Not sure if it's because of the fluid or whatnot, but you need to make sure you keep fresh coolant. And you stay with Toyota only coolant. Same thing with the transmission. You got to make sure you only use Toyota only fluid. If you don't, you're going to experience some issues. And the number one issue is you get acidic in the system, you start eating seals. I put 3 water pumps in this. So you may ask, why did you put 3 water pumps? Well, the first one was an actual Lexus part. $400 for a water pump. Did it myself, took about 3 hours. And that one failed in about 30,000 miles. Very frustrating. So I went aftermarket, got an ASIN. That one failed at about, so it was at 90,000. That one failed about 190,000. So I went to AutoZone, bought theirs. Really haven't had any problems ever since, and that's a lifetime part. So just goes to tell you, sometimes if you go to the OE, you're necessarily not going to get more life out of it. So we'll move on to the next thing, struts. So we did put new struts on this. This does not have the air suspension. It has the regular suspension. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But I put the KYB struts on it. Not expensive, not hard to do. These do have 4 control arms per side. You have 2 lowers, 2 uppers, and you have your, of course, your ball joints. But with the ball joints, you know, you can't service the main ball joint that's on, and I can't show you, you have to look at my previous videos. You can't service the one that's on the actual knuckle. There's no way to get to it. I've had to do it, the suspension 3 times. I did original OE parts. That cost a fortune, damn near $2,000. Then I went aftermarket to Moog, which is M-O-O-G, and those lasted, so I was 120,000, I had to change it again. And I just changed those again at 210. So they lasted longer, the aftermarket, and they were half the price, about $1,000 for all the arms. The rear suspension, haven't had to touch it. Only thing I had to do was take care of that, the struts back there. Haven't had a problem ever since. So goes to tell you. So some of the common other issues that you deal with on these cars. And, you know, one thing you want to stay away from. One is, you know, buy a quality battery. You notice that I don't have the covers here. Honestly, there's no use for them to be on there. All they do is retain heat, for one. For two, they also make it difficult to keep on pulling it on, pulling it off, pull it on, pull it off. I get sick of it, so I just left them off. Actually, I even left this cover off before, but I've since put it back on. So I do run K&N air filters. There is a dual element that's part of like to make the air smooth out for the mass airflow sensors. These harnesses suck. They like to come loose. So if they do this, completely normal. As long as the wires are tight, don't worry about that. But do not pull out that inner, like a little buffer that's in there. You will get a code for a MAF sensor. So you can use aftermarket filters, but don't remove that inner filter. And the one I'm talking about is this one. I'll pull it open here so you can see what I'm talking about. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I'll just remove this and it'll flow better. No, don't do that. That's this right here. It's more of a dampener. Those can also be cleaned too, just using the same type of filter cleaning kit that you use on the K&N. So we'll put that back on. So we've had to deal with that. Another common problem people generally have with these, the relay system here, for whatever reason, the relays go bad. It is a one-piece system. You have to replace the whole thing if it goes bad. Mine did have the problem once in a while when it's really, really, really cold. I mean like single digits. But then it doesn't have it when it warms up. So eventually that will be a problem I have to deal with. It is a $300 part. If you start noticing your headlights aren't kicking on or some of your functions that use relays, usually that's going to be your issue. And you can do that with a simple body control module search on your diagnostic tool. I'll go over that in a moment. We did have oil consumption issues with this engine. And it comes down to this has dual injection. So you have direct injection and regular fuel injection. And what happens on these, you know, they run synthetic oil. The oil's always been changed to 5,000 miles. But if you don't use a fuel system cleaner regularly, you will get carbon, and the carbon will get into on top of the piston and then wear its way down the side and actually freeze your rings up. And not like horribly, but enough where you're consuming a little bit of oil. And that's where I started my Valvoline Restore and Protect videos. I've actually used that and the CRC spray to clean out the combustion chamber, which was successful. We got that all taken care of, no problem at all. And now we're consuming half the amount of oil it was. Before it was consuming about a quart every 1,000 miles. Now it's doing about 2 quarts every 5,000 miles. And after more and more oil changes, it'll clean that out and free up those rings. And, you know, I don't see us having a problem going forward. But, you know, that's up to you guys if you want to do that. It does work. I just wanted to give that heads up. I did put 2 sets of spark plugs, one at 100,000 miles and another set at 200,000 miles. Spark plugs are not cheap for these. Don't go cheap. You need to go OE. And if you go original equipment manufacturer, the lasers, I do believe, are the ones that go on this. Buy them from a reputable seller. Do not buy them on eBay. Do not buy them on Amazon. All those plugs, 90% of the time, are counterfeit. And they will wear out fast and it will make your engine run like crap. I found out the hard way on that, so don't do that. The other thing that people tend to have a problem, this is an 07, is with the, this has an electric booster. So basically, there's no vacuum booster in here. It's done by an electric pump that pushes a solenoid and activates the brakes and puts pressure in the lines. It's a beautiful system and it works well, especially for, you know, the automatic backing up and parking thing that this particular car has. The issue is that you have to keep the brake fluid clean. A lot of people are like, oh my God, this system failed on me. It's like $3 grand to replace. And they don't even build parts. A lot of them are LKQ, like kind of quality coming from a used car. If you keep this brake fluid clean, you will not have that problem. If you push the brake and you hear that means that there's stuff getting in the system and you need to clean it out. These just have an abnormal amount of wear materials that end up in the fluid. I don't know why it's like that. I know Lexus fixed it in later years, but it's very easy. Again, never ever add brake fluid to a brake system unless you're putting it right back to where it was. If you're, what I'm about to show you, drawing it out and putting it back in, don't just draw it out, add fluid to brake it full, because this is your indicator to tell you if you need brakes. The more it goes down, the more likely your brake pads are wearing out, because that's where the fluid's going, is into the line. So you can see in here, it's about time to do it again. But most I look in here, I've had a couple of them come by and they're like, oh, it's making the noise. It's black, like really black. And what I do is I pull this and that screen out and I just draw the fluid out. Draw the fluid out, put a new quality synthetic .3, usually the Prestone yellow bottle, put that in there, and every oil change I do that. I draw it out, put it back in, draw it out, put it back in. And after a few times, the noise goes away, the problems go away. The one, when they have problems is when nobody addresses that, and it just gets worse and worse and worse until the point where they don't have brakes anymore. So, you know, there's that. Luckily, I've haven't had to experience that, but it's something that can happen if you continue to ignore that problem. I did put a belt on this. That was cheap. But again, you know, these are relatively simple things that you can do to your car that you can do on your own. You don't have to spend the money, you know, going crazy on a mechanic. There's so many videos online. If you want a video, I'll show you how to do this stuff. It's not that hard. Its biggest thing is just having the proper tools and then having the proper knowledge, and, you know, not forcing stuff that doesn't seem right without double checking to see what's going on. So with that said, let's talk about the things that you may not be able to do yourself. Back here, you'll see a little assembly that goes on the valve cover. You can kind of see it back there. And basically, you have one each side. Your high pressure pump that runs your direct injection, you'll be able to see it better on this side. It's right here, and it rides off the cam. And these O-rings go bad. They get hard, and then it drips oil, so you'll lose oil here. And you'll start smelling oil a little bit until eventually a lot of oil is coming out. That is a very expensive labor job, because it is labor intensive and requires a little more knowledge in order to complete. So expect the parts only cost like 150 bucks. Labor or something like that, like 600 to 1,000 bucks. But if you're not comfortable doing it, I highly recommend you have somebody do it. The other big repair on this that I did myself, but I have a lift and I know what I'm doing, is are the motor mounts. The motor mounts are $500 for the pair. It's hydraulic mounts, and you'll notice that when you put it in drive, it'll jump, or you'll get a little more vibration at idle than you're used to with the Lexus. More than likely, you have bad motor mounts. Lexus does not make it easy. The labor manual actually says to remove the engine. You do not need to remove the engine, but it is a very labor-intensive situation. And basically, the way I did it is I supported the engine from the bottom with post jacks, and then removed the entire subframe. That involves removing the entire suspension, the steering rack, everything, dropping that all out, going in, putting the motor mounts on each side, and putting it all back together. The labor on it is like 18 hours. I was able to do it in 8 hours. It's a lot of work. They have it done at a mechanic. It's over $2,000. I think there's some guys out there that put some videos on how to do it. It is very difficult, but it is one of the more expensive repairs. But that is because you have a very large V8, you know, shoehorned into a very small engine bay. So there's that, unfortunately. So we went over the gist of pretty much what I've done to this car. Tires, brakes, the only things that were out of the norm were, you know, making sure the brake fluid's fresh, I had to replace that amp in the back, and I had to deal with that trunk actuator. But that's about it. 210,000 miles. She still looks beautiful. The car is solid. My wheels are kind of beat up. This car's been in, God, I don't know, a lot of accidents. A lot of accidents, unfortunately. I do a lot of driving with work, and you can see the damage here and here. That was actually a totaled Prius that decided to run a red light and hit me. Totaled his car, but as you can see, didn't hardly do anything to this. I actually have new wheels coming in. I'm actually going chrome, which is kind of cool. There's a company out in Detroit that chrome's this style, and I always wanted the chrome on here to kind of match the other chrome that's on the car. But again, the car's been hit, and now it has so many miles on it. I just do the repairs that are necessary. I don't go overboard. But again, that brings us to another subject. These cars are built in Japan. They're super well built. The craftsmanship is phenomenal on these. If you're trying to save your deductible and go to a shop that's not going to charge you deductible, or you're having to do repairs on here, you're going to have a rude awakening. And that is, they're going to skimp somewhere. They're going to use aftermarket parts that suck. Like the last time, you know, and this is actually going back because they were supposed to replace these sensors, but as you can see, they didn't, and then they painted over them. You can't paint over these sensors. You either have to replace them, or that's it. There's no other option. These are ultrasonic sensors. So that's kind of one of the problems I had with a shop doing incorrect work. The other one was they replaced the headlight. And you might notice something different between this headlight and this headlight. This one has the washer. So, you know, some shops will try to get away with this stuff. And I noticed it right away. They had to order it. And because, of course, they don't make these. These are both, unfortunately, used because you can't find them anywhere. You have to keep these polished because, unfortunately, you can start to see the micro cracking in here. We just have bad luck with the earlier generation plastics, and it doesn't matter what car it is, it does haze. So you have to polish these on a pretty regular basis. But again, shops will try to get away with this stuff. You know, these are painted, they have an extra thick clear coat from the factory on these. When you take them to a shop, they're going to try to get away with just doing the absolute bare minimum on these. And you end up with mismatched panels and all sorts of other ugly issues on an otherwise beautiful car. And the other thing is not doing proper R&I. R&I is remove and inspect or remove and replace when they're painting. And you'll see that once in a while. This was from the previous owner, but you know, they won't, they'll tape off instead of removing trim. And again, you have to pay attention to these sort of things, because by the time you notice it, this shop is long gone, and they, you know, they're not going to fix what they did wrong. So it's important, take it to a reputable shop. That's why this car looks as good as it does. It does have some issues, but it doesn't have some of the issues you'll find on the used cars. You know, you'll find them for as cheap as sometimes $4,000, but a lot of times mismatched panels. They didn't, you know, it got in an accident. They just did a cheap paint job on it. None of the panels match. You don't want to end up like that. You know, they didn't use the proper parts. They didn't remove stuff when they were doing the, you know, the trims. They just taped over it. And what ends up happening is it'll start peeling and stuff like that. So those are just things you want to look for. And then if you have to repair it yourself, just make sure you're not trying to skimp. You bought a luxury car, treat it like a luxury car. Don't let them get away with doing subpar repairs, because it's not going to do you any favors in the future. But that's all I have for you guys. If you have any questions or comments, please ask. I did put MagnaFlow chambered mufflers on this that have the baffle in them. So basically, when you full throttle, they open up, and you'll see a video down in the description of when I put those on here. The car sounds wonderful when you're full throttling it. When you're idling it or you're just running through traffic, you can't even tell it has mufflers on it, because, you know, this engine's phenomenal. It is a great engine. It's a die-cast aluminum block, dual variant cams, makes 380 horsepower, plenty of torque. It was the first 8-speed automatic transmission on the market. That does require service. Actually, that's going to be another thing. I did do the service initially, which was about $300 at my Toyota dealer. It was great. Now with inflation, they want $800 for the same stinking service. So it goes to tell you, everything's going up. But again, you don't skimp on these things. They say it's lifetime fluid. Nothing is ever lifetime fluid unless you plan on throwing away your car. That's when you consider something lifetime. So please like, subscribe, share. If you have any questions, let me know. But again, you can get away with some parts that are not original equipment, but just make sure you do your due diligence and homework here. Don't go too cheap on stuff, because you'll get what you pay for. Thanks again, and have a great day.